Hello, hello. Hi, Serge.
Samir, how are you? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Leading with Clarity podcast. Happy to have you as my guest today.
Thank you so much, Samir, for hosting me, and it's so good to see you after so many years. I look forward for our engagement.
And I was just saying before our we went live, you have not aged a day younger than what I've seen you last.
You're so kind. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take it. Consistency in trying to be fit is always healthy as well. We can talk about
Yeah.
that as well later.
Yes, absolutely. And consistency is the key, I think. And when you're being leaders, there's a lot of nuances that you have to continue being rather than practicing one off, correct?
Correct. 100%.
I'm going to
100%.
go to the first thing to kick off this whole conversation is this quote that when I asked you what leadership is for you and why you do what you do, you said, I wake up every day with a clear sense of purpose to serve our customers, draw inspiration for my team, and contribute to organization with humility, pride, and unwavering commitment.
Yes.
Unpack a little bit of that, and I will share with you also something where you have had a huge impact on my life.
Oh, really? Wow. I didn't know that. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much. I guess, for me, to be honest, leading with purpose is very important because if you wake up in the morning and you're gonna go to the office or you're gonna travel around and you're spending 60, 70% of your life, whether at the office, on calls, in the plane, doing work, if there is no purpose behind it, then what's the point? Then you're just going, you're doing something, you're coming back, you're not feeling that you're engaging in something useful to the communities that you serve. So that's why, for me, honestly, leading with purpose is important. And purpose is something that is usually defined at the top level of an organization. Good organizations have purpose. If good organizations have purpose, then the teams and the people wake up every morning feeling that they're doing something beneficial. So this is why purpose is important for me. And then, of course, leading to serve our customers. Customers pay the bills, right? So you need to make sure that you serve them. You need to make sure that you get close to them. You need to make sure that you understand their pain points and how you can bring value with whatever you're doing as a company and as a leader. And then, of course, teams. For me, people are everything. If you don't get inspired by your own team, then you're not probably in the right place. And in my dictionary, you're not a leader. You cannot only go and inspire your teams. You have to go and be inspired by your teams so that then you can also inspire your teams. And that's why I bring that up. And then, of course, you have to have ownership. You have to have commitment. If you are part of an organization, then you are truly all in, or at least that's how I feel. I'm either all in or I'm not. And if I'm leading for an organization, I'm leading all in. And that's where the unwavering commitment comes from.
Before we dive into so many questions that are popping up in my head because of that, what you have unpacked, this let's define for the audience over here how you defined what is leadership and what is management. So people
Okay,
get management positions or managerial roles, and then there is leadership. How do you distinguish between these two concepts in the first place?
sure. So I'll tell you what I think is right. It might not be right for others. But for me, honestly, leadership is empathetic accountability, if that makes sense. It's bringing people together with clarity, which is the purpose of what we're doing here, leading with clarity, with humility and humbleness. Leave that ego at the door, right? You have to be humble and with purpose to deliver results with integrity. And you do all of that while having fun. Because if it ain't fun, it's not worth it. That's my motto. So just to
Hmm.
say it again, empathetic accountability, it's bringing people together as a unity with clarity, with humility, and delivering with purpose, results, and with integrity, and doing it while having fun. And then that other part of the question, transitioning from manager to leader, for me, honestly, you need to step out from the comfort of control because as we're managers we want to control and we want to do things because we're smart and we're fast and we're still young and dynamic, so we want to get out of that comfort of control into the courage of trust, right? To inspire through clarity, to listen You have two ears and one mouth. Use them that way, I always say. So listen with humility, as I said, and most important, hold yourself and your teams accountable, but do it with dignity and with pride and with empathy, right? And then honestly, you stop becoming a manager when you stop managing tasks and you start empowering people. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but where does one draw the line between, because every leader for me is a great manager, but every manager is not a great leader, right? So
Correct.
they have tasks, they have to fulfill everything. There is a role that they have to play as a manager as well. They have to get things done. So how do you balance that?
Yes, very good question. I think another big ability to be a leader is to be able to poke a stick and then take it back up. And what I mean with that is you lead with clarity. You start with a vision that could be 10,000 feet or 30,000 feet vision, and you communicate that with a lot of clarity across the organization. And we can talk about that later, the different styles of communication at different levels of the organization, because that's also something I've seen and I've learned from my own mistakes, where you cannot communicate the same message across the whole organization the same way. So you start with that, and then you have the right people in the right roles, right, as a leader. And if not, you have to make sure you have the right people in the right roles. When you have that, then you can empower, you can drive accountability, and you start empowering people. Now, to do this with control, you need to have very structured operating rhythm, very structured measurement tools, KPIs that are being set to start tracking. And your task as a leader, if you want to think of it as a task, is to make sure you provide the space during those regular reviews for people to collaborate, for people to speak up, for people to innovate while measuring the KPIs and the performance. And if you feel that something is not right, or if you feel as a leader that there is a mismanagement somewhere, or a miss or a lack of promise, you have to poke a stick and go from 10,000 feet all the way to the ground, roll your sleeves. At least that's how I like to do it. Work with the team, do the tasks, become a manager, but become a manager for a very small period of time until you feel that everything is in control, and then you pull yourself back up. And if you are agile enough to be able to do this, I think it would be a winning formula, because you can't always empower people and stay at the top, and you can't always manage tasks. And to answer your question, I think the fine line is to know enough your organization and genuinely know your people to know when you dive in and when you dive back out.
Hmm. And what is an indicator of when to dive out?
When you feel that you're struggling the organization too much, because you have to always remember, as humble as we are as leaders, there is this aura that comes with a leader coming into the field, right? There is this aura that comes with a leader coming into a factory to try to work on details. People are not always very comfortable, and they're not always being themselves. Now, of course, the more you know your teams, the more you're connected, the more you get them comfortable, the more you create that culture of collaboration. But in general, you can't stay too long in the weeds because of two things. One, you won't allow people freedom. If you are staying too long in the weeds, that means that the managers that you're working on are having a problem, and you need to consider that. Would I consider a change? Because then they're not able to take control of the tasks. And three, you are just there, you're not able to lead at the top, because obviously you have a multitude of things that you need to look at, and you can't always focus on one thing. That's your job, different perspective and different opportunities. So if you're there for too long, it means either you have the wrong managers, and then therefore you need to think of a change, or you think of a coaching or development performance, or you're struggling the organization too much, and it's time for you to step up to be able to lead the bigger picture.
Interesting. So let me share with you where you had the greatest impact. I know I surprised you with that.
You did.
Do you remember the conversation we had in our office where you brought in all your team members and we had a sit down conversation on beanbags a few years
Yes.
ago?
Yes.
And then in that, one of the questions that I had asked each one is, what drives Serge as a leader? And everybody came up with KPIs and they came up with profit and different answers. And your answer was very striking. You said, my role is to bring out the best in you guys. And nobody had answered that, right?
True.
Um,
True.
so that
True. And
was
I
the
truly believe in it.
yeah, and I can see that everything that you say and do is aligned with that. Um, and when I invited you to be on this podcast, one of the things I wanted to know is when you have like a large size, 1,400 people across a very large organization, there'll be a lot of, especially in a country like UAE, there's a lot of different cultures and things that are coming together. So I put a question over here. You've led teams across Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia, right? What does clarity look like when leadership crosses cultures for you?
Yeah, interesting question. I think first of all, it's very important as a leader to learn to be agile culturally, if that makes sense. Good leaders, and I've learned this because I was not agile culturally, so not everything I'm saying I do perfectly well, by the way, and I'm humble enough to say that. But I know now at 47 years of age, after 25 years of doing different things and working for three different large and amazing companies, that cultural nuances are extremely, extremely important to be understood by leaders. Because if you don't understand the differences in cultures, the culture in Turkey is not the same as the culture in Germany, is not the same as the culture in South Africa, and is not the same as the culture in UAE or Saudi Arabia. So, number one is to understand the cultural nuances and understand the differences. What does culture mean to the teams in South Africa could not be the same as what it means to the teams in Turkey. So, number one is to be able to align behavioral traits and what we think as a corporate organization, for example, trust means. Because trust in Turkey means one thing, it means a different thing in Europe, in Germany, it means a different thing in France, and a different thing in South Africa. So, the
Can you give an
first
example? Can you give an example how it is different? Because trust is universally, I would imagine, is the same, right? So how would it be different in different
trust
cultures?
trust is the same, but the way they approach trust is different, if that makes sense. For example, you have countries where authority is extremely important and it's in the DNA. So if I have a managing director, for example, that works for me in a certain country, X, and that country by DNA is authoritarian, then everything flows up to that person. And you have to understand that for them to run the business properly and serve their communities and their cultures, their customers and their communities expect that to be the case. Now, you try to change that to have the leader become super open and super agile, like, for example, what it should be in country Y, let's say in Europe or the US, you're starting to make a mistake here because you're changing the DNA of how things should happen locally. And that's very important and sensitive because not many organizations get that. And I always had a nice debate, let's call it, with my global CEOs to say, you cannot change Samir to become John.
Hmm.
There's no one size fit all in leadership. Yes, we don't want authoritarian leadership and we want openness. And there are certain minimums that we need to achieve in leadership as an organization. But I have to accept and understand that the way Samir leads in that country with that community is totally acceptable and expected. If I change Samir too much, I might break the DNA and something might be different. And therefore, to be able to have that cultural nuance and understanding and trying to bring people, and what I did, if I go back to my last role at in my last company, I was managing all of those countries that you mentioned. And one of the tasks we had is we want to create our own culture, which is a very unique and different thing to say. Our mandate, and that was a mandate for all of us because the company was coming together as a new company after a lot of integration. So we needed to create our own culture. And the first thing that we did as a team, and this was inspired by my CHRO, who I think is the most important person in the organization, as important as the CFO and as, of course, others in the leader. But CHROs are extremely important when it comes to that. And we came up with this workout session, culture workout session, which means, okay, we have those four top values of the company. We have 16 behavioral traits that are the measure of how culture is going. This is the pulse of how things happen on the ground. Let's take each one of those behavioral traits and ask those local teams to have their own workouts and tell us what it means exactly to them in their culture. And we started gathering that information. So I had information and inputs from Turkey, from South Africa, from Paris, from Germany, and other countries. Once we got all of that bottoms up approach, we did another workout session, now with myself involved, my CHRO, and the actual MDs. And then we said, okay, interesting. In Turkey, we, not I, which is one of the behavioral traits, like to drive inclusion, means the following. But in South Africa, it means the following. How can we combine? How close can we get without changing the essence of what it means in Turkey versus what it means in South Africa? And we did that for about a couple of weeks, off-site, on-site, remotely, and until we came up with a set of behavioral traits and a subset that explains what it means that is mostly common across most cultures. And you never get it 100%. But at least now, my guy in Turkey understands my guy in South Africa, who understands my guy in Paris. And now they know what things are in each country and how different they are, but they also know how we agree as a team, as a leadership team, to drive the region forward. And that becomes your cultural uniqueness. And we did a great job because we were taken as a best practice in the organization globally to drive culture and uniqueness of culture that way.
So
Does
what
that
I'm
make
hearing
sense?
is, yeah, it does. So what I'm hearing you say is to identify the culture. So you create a framework for culture. You create depending on values and behaviors, and then the audit and the questions and everything will drive people to start thinking in a more focused direction. And you bring out the culture rather than you impose a culture. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You bring it out bottoms up. You align it, especially if you have, your question was, how do you deal with different cultures and multiple teams? Especially when you have that. If you have a single country, or if you're the managing director of the United States of America, it's easy. It's 52 states, it's one country, it's trucks here and there. More or less, there are differences between states, but it's the same country. But if you are global in nature or regional in nature, specifically if you are between Asia and Africa and the Middle East, and those are very unique and different and intense cultures, you have to get it bottoms up, you have to hash it out, you have to shake it, you have to align it, and then you come to a common understanding. And then you take it a step further. How do you make sure it's understood? That happens through operating rhythm, meaning when I have my weekly staff meetings with my leadership team, we always had the practice at least once a month, every 4 meetings, someone from a certain country brings a mid-management person to present to the rest of the leadership team what they have done in relation to one or two of the behavioral traits as examples, real life examples, because this also brings an awareness of what does it mean to say we, not I, or what does it mean to say trust in real life, in reality, and how did you use that on the ground to win
Yeah.
with your
Yeah.
colleagues, with others, etc. So you do that on a regular basis and you keep it alive that way. And then you do a check every year. Are we still living that culture or not? And you do that work out again and again as years go passing by.
Interesting. Uh, how do you deal with managers who don't step up to be leaders and continue being managers in their roles? Because you, as a leader, you have people who are having managerial roles who are reporting to you directly, right? But you're not
Yes,
seeing them to become the leader that you want them to become sometimes. And you're seeing them to continue being managers, which is
right.
KPI driven, focused, everything. So, how do you deal with a situation like that?
Right. I'll take it probably. These are difficult questions, by the way. You didn't promise me that. You said it was going to be an easy discussion, but I'll try. I'll take it a step back. I think it all starts with the people operating review, or what we call a POR, or a succession planning review, right? This is where you really have to hash down your organization. It's a very strict process, and we can talk about that in a separate discussion, but it's a very strict process, an important process, which allows you to understand your people, to know who they are, and to deep dive through the organization from top all the way to the bottom. Not only managers, but their teams and their teams and their teams, depending how deep the organization is. The more honest discussions you're able to have around those people reviews, the more challenging discussions and serious feedback sessions that you can give and take, the better you understand your teams. Once you understand your teams and you have trust that this makes sense, you're now placing people in different quadrants. The outcome of people operating reviews is you get top talents, you get people that are within the mid-range of the organization, you get people that are new comers to the organization, young talent that is important to watch. You understand development needs and strengths of every person in the organization. Now, the reality of the matter is not everyone is going to become a leader. And it's okay. Some people don't want to become leaders. And it's also okay. Some people want to be project directors for the rest of their lives because that's their purpose and that's their passion. And it's perfectly fine. If we expect all of our employees to become leaders, then something is wrong, right? It's not the right way to do things. But as you do your succession planning, as you understand how your organization looks on a heat map, who are the top talents? Who are the people that could potentially be leaders in 1 year or in 2 years or in 5 years or in 10 years? And you work a rigorous plan with your HR team on individual development plans, on training, on coaching, to support those who are wanting to be leaders, but also protect and help those that want to continue to be managers. That's very important. Not everyone that wants to be a manager is not a top talent. You have perfect performers that are managers and want to remain managers for the rest of their lives, and that's perfectly fine. We respect that and we support it. And that would be my view. So, how do I deal with them? We'll have honest discussions, whether through the people reviews or one-on-ones or through the time I spend, because I love to be out there, and people who know me know that I love to travel. I don't like to see the world from behind my desk. I think it's a dangerous place. You need to be out in the field so you get to know your people even more. You start having those discussions and people become comfortable telling you, listen, we don't want to move up. I'm happy where I am. So you respect that and you see how you can give them the support, the skill set, the tools to keep them growing within the mandate of that manager position.
Hmm. We spoke briefly about N1, N2, N3, and the leadership and going down, right? Uh, if someone says, I want to stay here, is you're saying that they can grow within that role? Uh, what's missing for them that they don't want to? Is it that they find that as a comfort zone, or is it their operating model where they're so focused on KPIs and task? They're very task oriented rather than people oriented. Is that the reason that you have identified and said, okay, you can stay in where you are? Or are they missing out an opportunity to grow, to look at people around them and grow them as well?
It's a loaded question, I think. Not loaded, it's a tough question because there's no right or wrong, I
Hmm.
think, in that. I believe that some people want to be where they are because of personal reasons.
Yeah.
They don't want more responsibility because for them life is a 360 wheel, right? And it's not only about work. Not everyone wants to become the CEO of a company. Some people want to do hobbies on the side. They want to take care of families. Some people are not able because they have to spend maybe 50-60% of their time taking care of special needs at home, whatever those special needs are.
Yeah.
And therefore they decide to say, you know what, wherever I am, with the balance that I have, with the income I'm making for myself and my family, I'm fine that way, and I do not want to go beyond that. And others are incapable. Now, that's a different story. And if they are incapable, they become blockers of success within the organization. And again, I go back to the people reviews. You identify who are the blockers and you try to get the best out of them, but then you try once, you try twice, and if it doesn't work, you have to unfortunately change them. We can talk about how to deal with that later. So some are blockers and they don't want to go because they don't have the motivation and they don't want to grow. Problem. Some are there because they have personal reasons to be there and they find that balance and they don't want to change that balance, which is perfectly fine. And some others do not want to lead people. They want to be senior individual contributors. Perfectly
Hmm.
fine. We need those people as well, right?
Yeah.
You need everyone in the organization. And there is no right formula. I think the trick here is to genuinely understand and know your people. Because if you're sitting at the top and you're just looking at an Excel sheet and you see Paul and Samir and Serge placed somewhere and you don't know who they are because you're not enough out there and you're relying on people to tell you, you don't really know if Samir has a problem, for example, or is happy where he is because of a certain situation. But if I'm out there and I know, I understand that and I support that. And imagine how much more you can get out of Samir in that position because you asked me, can you grow them? Yes, you can. I think you can. You can give them more and a bit more within the mandate of being a
Yeah.
manager.
Yeah. Even though you say there is no right formula, I think you have also said the formula. The formula is to actually understand your people. Understanding the people is the formula, right? Going deep into what
I
their
think that's
journey.
why it's called leading with clarity, Samir, because you unpack everything people say and you put it in a simple way, which is amazing. And that's why I love talking to you.
You spoke about hobbies, and you're a blues singer and musician. You're a band frontman as well. I want to ask you this question. The thing is, you spoke about There are people who want to do things on the side. They want to do special needs, help something, do volunteer work, work on their hobbies. You do all of that, and still you make the time to lead countries and lead regions, etc. Right? So it is not impossible to do things on the side while doing things while leading large organizations. So what are people missing, and how do you do it? How do you do all of that?
I, I don't think people are missing anything. It's unfair for me to say that people are missing because I can do it or they cannot. I think it's the way we are as people. I try to unpack that because I'm asked these questions a lot of times. Like, Serge, by my teams, in interviews, by friends, how do you manage to be a husband and a father and a musician and now sometimes a DJ and a leader and a CEO and go to the gym on a daily basis? And honestly, at first instance, years back, I used to say, I don't know, I just do it. And then when I try to analyze, I think I understand why. And I believe it's because I manage my calendar so rigorously,
Hmm.
almost OCD type. And I'm so consistent about managing my calendar that it works. In other words, if you look at my calendar today, you'll find there's time for the gym, there's time for a break, there's time for all my calls, there's time for lunch, there's time to take my creatine shot if I have to take it. Everything is in the calendar. And the trick is, if it's in the calendar, I feel I feel that I'm behind if I don't do it on time as stated. Now it sounds a bit tough, but that's how I am. And my wife goes crazy with that because she's totally the opposite. She's totally so if I have on my calendar gym day one, 9 to 10 a.m. If it's 9:15 and I'm not at the gym, I feel I missed something. It's exactly as if I have a meeting with my team and I missed it or I'm late to it. So I treat everything in my calendar as if it was the holy book, the Bible or the Quran or whatever it is. So that I think that is very important because it allows you to think ahead. It allows you to put space. I put space for band training. Now I don't put band training at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, but I put band training on Saturday at 9 a.m. So my calendar also is full on Saturday and Sunday. If I have a dinner with friends at 8 p.m. next week, it's on my calendar, and so on and so forth. So I manage my calendar rigorously. I try to balance it. And if I look at my calendar and I feel it's too much skewed towards work and I don't have time for my gym, then there's a problem. So I reshuffle things around work without impacting the quality of what I need to do. And that's very important. I'm super accountable, I have super ownership, and I want to deliver for my organization at the highest level. But I still believe that there is time to do other things. If you have capacity, if you have the right team, if you are, again, if you're empowering people and not managing tasks, you're able to do this. If you're only managing tasks, I don't think that is possible because your task management becomes super consuming that you will not have time to do all of the other stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered properly, but
you did.
I
You
try
did.
to analyze. I just do it. I don't know, Samir.
So again, when you say you don't know, and you've actually given the formula as well for this, what managers sometimes are missing in their lives, leaders are missing in their life, is having an OCD around their calendar. I think the moment they don't have that, they don't have a view of how they have to protect their time, is where they spend it extensively at work or extensively in some areas and not really recognize where the blind spots are. You're able to see your blind spots immediately when you look at the calendar, when there is
Yeah,
no.
I'm very visual. Maybe it comes back to my time when I was working for General Electric, which is, to me, one of the best companies in the world, and it was a foundation of who I am today as a leader or as a person. And I had this quality role at once. And when I was in quality, I'm a certified black belt and a Lean Six Sigma black belt as well. But Lean specifically changed the way I look at things. Everything in Lean, as you know, is value stream mapping. Everything becomes visual. So you draw a line, a timeline, and then you draw a process and you say, okay, it takes me 5 minutes to do A, 2 minutes of waste, 10 minutes to do B. How can I reduce the waste? And that's how you think as a lean leader, right? And everything in my life became that. So even my calendar today is managed that way. My day is managed that way. My wife Nadine, whom you know well, used to joke and say, where are you going in 6 weeks, as a joke? And I open my calendar and I'll tell her I'll be in Singapore. It's like, Seriously, I was joking. Shut up. Like it's, but it is who I am, and not everyone probably can do that, and not everyone has to do that. I think we each find our own recipe for success. And again, I don't think there is a right or wrong. That works for me, and it served me so far. So I'll share
I,
it.
so what I'm hearing from you, what you're constantly looking for is efficiency gains. How you can actually make what you're doing more efficient, more efficient, more efficient, right?
I
In all
hate wasting. I hate going into meetings where we just talk and talk and talk and talk and no action is taken. I'm impatient. Something I need to develop. I am impatient. Your teams, if you go and ask my teams, what are some of the things you'd like Serge to do differently? Just be more patient. I think that would come up first. And I'm working on that. I know, but my DNA is impatience and it's efficiency. I want to get things done, boom. And I realized with age and with time that not everyone is at the same pace. Some people are faster than you, some people are slower than you. And to be able to be successful, you have to account for all of that. And you are responsible to be agile enough to be faster or slower to be at the pace of your organization and to keep that organization going forward.
Interesting. And you spoke about agility. I'm going to pick on that now. Uh, when someone enters an organization for the first time, meaning he's
Mhm.
just been promoted to any of the managerial roles, it could be a top management or a mid level management, he's pushed into that role over there. And very likely there's going to be a lot of firefighting that has become the norm of that organization. How do they step away and create time for himself to become the leader uh, when he has a lot of time which is spent actually on firefighting?
I'm gonna spin this around. Why don't you tell me what you think, and then I'll tell you what I think. How about that? Just to make it fun, Samir. You can't ask me all the questions, man. Do you want to do that, or you want me to answer? It's your show, so.
So my perspective is, again, they don't have the calendar in place. I'm thinking that they have not yet planned, or they don't have a vision of it, and they don't protect uh, the calendar, or they've not had an agreement conversation with whoever is their superior on how they will deliver what they will have to deliver. This is what I'm thinking about, because I have not been in the corporate world since I was 28. I've always lived the rebel kind of a way, trying to do things on my own and figure things on my own. Clarity has been something that I've been chasing all my life. So uh, this conversation is more to learn from people like you who's already been in those seats, been in the organization context. So I'm really deeply curious. How
So
do
I so
you?
I, I I agree with you. I mean, yes, when you say they come into an organization new, obviously they don't have the calendar because they don't know, right? So imagine you're coming new into an organization, all you know is what you've interviewed and what you've researched. And we all know, and let's not kid ourselves, as honest as we are while we interview talent to bring them in, reality on the ground is always different. And that's why, before even you have a calendar, before even you step into firefighting and jump into solving problems, you have to step back. And as I said in the beginning, you have to listen with humility and understand. The more you ask questions in the first 30, 60 days, the more you talk to different people at different levels of the organization, the more you throw yourself out there in the field, not only virtually or within the office, especially if it's a big region, the smarter you get, the better perspective you get. You had a guest that spoke about different perspectives, right? And I watched that very interesting discussion. And he's super right, by the way. You need multiple perspectives to be able then to build your calendar. Otherwise, the biggest mistake is, and I've seen this and I've done it myself many, many times until I learned, you step into the role, you assume that you know what the problems are based on what you've been told during the interview sessions, etc., and you jump into firefighting mode. And once you do that, you definitely lose the bigger picture. You lose the sense of purpose, and you're just juggling, and what they call it, drinking from the fire hose. I don't like that.
Mm.
I don't know if you know this term in the corporate. You've not been in the corporate world for a long time, but you ask people, "How is it going?" Then I'm drinking from the fire hose. Well, my friend, if you're drinking from the fire hose, you've done something wrong because you haven't stepped back, you haven't
Mm.
listened, you haven't digested, and you haven't drawn your calendar. Now, once you draw your calendar, there will be fires, right? But then, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not simplification. Um, you have to focus. You cannot boil the ocean. You choose your top 3 or 4 key strategic actions and you drive those because you know that those are the most impactful based on everything that you have learned.
Mm.
Does that make sense also to you? I don't know, but that's my
It does.
perspective.
Yes. And here is a question for you, which is aligned with that. Can you share a moment when lack of clarity almost cost you or your team and how you navigated it? So you have been going on a journey right from your GE days, where I'm sure you would have made your own mistakes and learned tremendously and very large lessons, etc. So perhaps the question is, what has been your biggest failure, or while you're being the leader, not,
Mm.
uh, and then you took a call, you took a decision, and you realize, man, this is not working. This is not. I should not have done it
Yes,
this way, and then that
yes.
has changed the trajectory of how you lead after that.
Yes, there is actually there are many. I did so many mistakes, and I still do a lot of mistakes, and we all learn. I think from we have to all be humble enough to accept that we all continue to learn from our mistakes, and that's number one. So there's a lot, but let me think of one. There's one. Sorry, there's one specific one. I'm not gonna give the name of the company but it will be given away anyway.
Yeah.
It was the first company I worked for. That's fine, and it was the first senior role that I have been appointed to. And I had to relocate for a while for that role outside the UAE. That role was interesting because it was a role that is the most senior in that office in that country, but it has zero direct reports. So I had, let's say, 80 people in that office from multiple businesses of that organization, all of them reporting solid line into their different businesses and organization, all of them having their different mandates and taking instructions from here or there. And I'm coming in a matrix as the most senior executive in that country to drive the vision specifically of that country and to drive all those people. So that was a role where you're leading by influence, right? Not by authority. And being young and still having that manager mindset of dealing with tasks, when I was doing the interviews for that role, obviously I had to meet with the four different business leaders that lead those heads in that country because I'm coming there and they're all worried. They want my support, they want my expertise, they want my drive, but they also want to make sure that they deliver the KPIs for their bigger organizations. So they gave me things that they believed as leaders of those functions should happen or should change immediately as I start my role, right? Each one of them gave me a set. So I had like 10 or 12 different actions. So I came into this organization, walked into the office, greeted everyone. I have the energy, I have the passion, so things seems to be good. And as of day two, I started hammering and driving down those things that the bosses of each of these leaders have told me to focus on, which takes me back to what I said before. And obviously, me being the most senior in that position, people had to respond because of the perceived authority, right? But at the same time, they're like, this is not working. But I didn't know that. A month later, or even 2 months later, I had a resignation, someone very senior. And then I got a call from a couple of those managers and saying, what the hell is going on, Serge? It's like, I don't know. I'm trying to push things. I want to drive things. We agreed on the agenda. He said, no, we told you what we need you to do. It doesn't mean we need you to do it today. And that was a big aha moment for me. I said, shit, because it was a learning stage at that time. This was about 12, 13 years ago. And that's where I realized, hold on, I did not come in to ask these people what works for them and what doesn't. I did not come in to ask these people what are the pain points of their customers and what are their customers wanting. I did not ask those people if we were to do those changes that are mandated, how would those impact the customers first and how would those impact them and their ability to work. So what I did at the time, I remember very well, I had an all hands meeting with everyone else and I stepped back and I said, I raised my hand, I apologize. I'm wrong, or I was wrong. I came in thinking stupid enough that I'm going to drive things your way. And it's not my intention. It's wrong. Let's take it back. Let's step back. And over the next 2 months, I want to go out to meet all your customers. I want to ask questions. I want you to tell me what works for you. And then I want to see how can we get to where we need to get in a thorough and careful way. And if you think it's impossible to achieve one or two or three of those 10 things, then let me know, and it's my duty to go fight on your behalf to make this happen. And when you start doing that type of dialogue, you immediately feel a different set of vibes in the office. And that's where really it was a huge learning for me to say, you cannot lead with authority, you lead with collaboration. You cannot come in and dive in and just push things around like a bully. You have to listen, you have to understand. And your job is not always to take what they tell you at the top and implement it without understanding the nuances of what's on the ground. A lot of the times, your job is to fight back the top and say, we cannot do this, but here is an alternative that's similar, and that's how we're going to go about it. But always do things carefully and thoroughly. Speed is important, but it's not the most important thing. I think doing things right is more important than doing things fast.
Hmm. Interesting. I have this question which is so connected to everything that you just said. What role does
Okay.
humility play in high stake leadership, especially when pressure is high and decisions are fast?
I think it has everything to do, honestly, because ultimately we're all human beings. And I think there's always this misperception when a CEO or a global CEO or a regional CEO flies in to meet teams. They always see that person, he or she, um, as this special breed of human. Like, we have to speak to them different way. We have to put a mask because now I have to speak that executive corporate language. Otherwise, I'm going to be tagged as a non-performer. Honestly, bullshit. Sorry, excuse my French. We're all human beings. You are a CEO, Samir, and you fly. You're the same Samir that was having a drink or dinner or whatever last night with your friends. You're that same person. You like the same things that everyone else likes. You still eat. You still go to the gym. If you do, you still have hobbies. Once you understand that people are people,
Hmm.
right? The whole perspective changes. And as leaders, once we understand that we are also people, we don't earn stripes. Stripes are not important. Anyone can be a leader, right? From the cleaner all the way to the top, as long as you know how to take initiative. So, as long as you're humble enough and you have enough humility to accept that as a leader and portray that genuinely as you walk the offices around the world, naturally decisions become easier. Pressure is always going to be there, but you can drive. People would want to kill themselves to do what's right for you and deliver under pressure instead of you forcing them to do things under pressure. That's the trick. How can I get you to do whatever it takes to serve the organization because there is a mutual respect between me as a leader and you versus me trying to push down your throat things that you need to do? And that's where humility plays in. It allows you
Hmm.
to do that. But it doesn't happen on day one, by the way. Same as
Yeah.
trust. It's earned. And by the way, big trick. A lot of people I know, a lot of leaders I know today, a lot of leaders I worked for speak the language of humility, say that they are humble, because the more you say you're humble, you're not, by the way, and mask that humility. And they go around the world. But I promise you, our teams are smart. If you're
Hmm.
not caught on day one, you're going to be caught on month one. If you're not caught on month one, you're going to be caught on year one. Ultimately, if you're not genuine about being humble and have humility, people will figure that out. And once they figure that out, culture becomes a disaster. So please, as leaders, don't mask. If you're not humble enough, say you're not humble enough and try to figure out ways to empower and inspire by not being humble. Because everyone says we're humble, but not everyone is humble.
Hmm.
And people still wear the mask because they believe that, oh, as a corporate CEO, I need to act this way and look this way and say these things. In my humble opinion, not true. The same person that's in the office should be the person that's outside the office. And many people, this is a very big debate. Many people disagree with me. Many CEOs disagree with me. And a lot of the feedback I get also as a region CEO is that, Serge, sometimes you need to wear that corporate mask. Honestly, I don't see that.
Hmm.
I'm sorry. And I say that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But with my teams, it always works.
Yeah. Can you believe it's 45 minutes since we started?
I told you I can talk. I was worried an hour is too long, but well, I can talk. But I hope it's, I really enjoyed it, honestly. And
Really?
I continue
Me
to
too.
enjoy it. I hope everyone
Uh,
else is enjoying it.
I have one last question, and then I want to share one thing that I'm taking away from the whole conversation, which is uh, But first, I want to hear from you. If you had to leave your team or this audience over here who's listening in with one principle, a leadership rhythm that they could carry forward, or one thing that you feel that will make them move from being a manager to being a leader, if you could choose just one thing and say, what would that be for you? I mean, there are so many
One,
things, obviously, but
there are so many things, yes. So if you want to choose one thing to transition from a manager to being a leader, I would say be true to yourself. Be honest to yourself.
yeah,
Because if I were to expand slightly on that,
yeah,
everyone they have to, if you're in the corporate world, you have to say that you want to become the leader. But be honest, do you really want that responsibility? And are you really up for it? Because being a leader is also a huge, massive responsibility of power. And if it's abused, it's a disaster. So be honest to yourself. Do you really want to be the leader? Are you ready to be the leader? Are you ready to take on more than you, so sorry, to give more than you take? There are
yeah.
all of those things that you have to be before you transition. So be honest to yourself, I would say. That's the best advice I can give. Because there's a lot others, but that's the best one.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would connect your answer to a single word. If it would be, it is authenticity. Be
Absolutely.
authentic, right? Be authentic in every transaction, in every role, in every position, in every conversation. Uh, be the authentic leader, or be without a mask. Everything, that is one thing that I'm taking away from this conversation. And the seed of all of this is intention, which is set the right intention for yourself and for the people around you. Uh, when you start doing that, then you will start raising everyone to a higher
Yeah.
potential. Serge, it's been a pleasure after so many years having this conversation, but
Pleasure is mine.
so much learning from you. I think we can go on and on and on. Uh,
Thank you so
thank
much,
you.
Samir. I really love what you're doing with this series, and I look forward to listen to other colleagues and other inspiring people that could teach me as well how to continue my journey in leadership. And thank you so much for hosting me. It means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.